and welcome to Talk of the Bay for today, Monday, January 12th. I'm your host, George Cadman, and on today's show, we're going to be doing an update about Flock and their automated license plate readers. We're going to be talking with several guests on the controversy surrounding local government contracts with Flock Safety, the company, and their cameras that track license plates. After revelations that police have illegally shared license plate data with ICE and other agencies, the Santa Cruz City Council will be meeting tomorrow to consider ending their contract with Flock. Can technology and government be reined in to protect our Fourth Amendment rights of privacy? That's the question. Today on KSQD 90.7 FM, 89.5 FM, and 89.7 FM in Prunedale, and online at ksqd.org. Be right back in just a second with my guests. Welcome back to Talk of the Bay for today, Monday, January 12th. And joining me today on the program, and I'll just remind listeners as well that we'll be taking calls. Probably around 5:30, I'll open the phone lines for listeners to call in and ask questions of my four guests. And my guests are Peter Gelblum, a retired attorney who has lived in the San Lorenzo Valley since 2008. As an attorney in Los Angeles for 30 years, he worked on such cases as the OJ Simpson civil case, RIAA versus Napster, and a case involving ownership of Alberto Vargas's artwork. He was on the board of the ACLU of Northern California for 10 years and still serves on their legal committee. He's been the chair of the Santa Cruz County Chapter of the ACLU of Northern California for over 10 years and has been working on issues related to automated license plate readers since 2015. I've got also in the studio Julia Monahan. She's lived in Santa Cruz County for over 25 years and has been active in political and community organizing all her life. Coming both from a privileged background and also a place of intersectional identities, Julia leads with compassion and empathy for the struggles of all people. She has lobbied for political campaigns, organized at her alma mater, UCSC, rallied with marginalized groups, including LGBTQ+, disabled and BIPOC communities, and is actively of service in many community organizations, including Indivisible Santa Cruz County, where she co-leads the media team. Hello, Julia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about this very important issue today. I'm also joined by Sean Doherty. He's worked as a software engineer since 1999, including 7 years at IBM and 10 years at Apple, during which he worked on operating systems and hardware modeling. He recently resigned his position at Apple in order to run for office in Congressional District 19 against incumbent Jimmy Panetta. Yay. He and his wife have lived in Santa Cruz for 10 years and have a 3-year-old son. Hello, Sean.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. And also joining me in the studio is Sid Jones, a retired security professional residing in Santa Cruz County. Thank you so much for being with us today on Talk of the Bay.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back.
So I'm getting a little echo. I can hear myself echoing back, just letting the awesome volunteer here know that. So we are updating folks that are listening because we did a couple of shows within the last 6 months or so on this issue about the city council meeting, and we're going to dive into the city council meeting tomorrow to consider pulling out of its contract with Flock Safety after several recent data breaches and sustained community pushback about the use of these cameras. But before we dive into the update and how people can get involved, how they can make their voices heard on whether or not the city should end its 2-year contract, which is set to expire March 27th of this year. Let's talk about Flock for those who don't know, because today I was telling some of my neighbors about this radio program, and I had more than a few people say, what is Flock? They don't even know what it is. So I know that's really basic, but if one of you could jump in and just explain, what are ALPRs? What is Flock?
Yeah, I can take that. This is Sid. ALPR stands for Automated License Plate Reader Cameras, and in the case of Flock, they're cameras that are on the side of the road. They're solar powered, and they're motion activated. So when a car drives by, the camera is activated and a still photo is taken. At that point, the image is uploaded to a central server and processed, and the license plate itself is OCR'd essentially. It's found to be the actual numbers and digits, hopefully, and then many other metadata and other actual data about the vehicle is also captured, like the make, model, color, maybe any damage to it, as well as any stickers to it.
Okay, and So Flock is a company that contracts with law enforcement agencies, city and county governments, perhaps HOAs, I don't know, to provide these cameras, and then they kind of run them for the agency or the whatever, the city government. And then they store the data, and so they're kind of a middle person. Like, it's not like the city or the law enforcement agency went and bought the cameras themselves and they're operating them and control all the data. Flock is controlling it. And then the agencies are okay. We'll get into what some of the concerns are. How many of these cameras are in our Tri-County area? There's 20 in Watsonville, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And there's 8 in Santa Cruz?
Yes, there's 8 in Santa Cruz, 10 in Capitola, and I believe we're up to, is it 37 in Watsonville?
37?
They approved more.
They added more.
That increased, because the last show I did, there was only 20. Okay. And then you, Sid, recently wrote a letter. It was the letter to the city council.
Mm-hmm.
It was regarding the fact they've added a new camera in front of the Dream Inn to make it a total of 9 in Santa Cruz. And in the letter, you stated that they should have run that by the city residents and gotten our approval, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it definitely appears clear that there are 9 cameras now. And I'm actually not sure, like, which camera is the 9th camera. So it may well not be the Dream Inn one. Mm-hmm. But I believe I've witnessed 9 cameras in real life lately, and also the organizational audits, which capture all the searches that the Santa Cruz Police Department personnel do, shows them mostly searching 9 cameras, like 1 network and 9 cameras. So both the audit logs as well as my own visual work has been confirming that we have 9 cameras now in Santa Cruz for some reason, and it's unclear how or why. But yeah, we contracted for 8, and so it's unclear why there are 9 cameras there.
And this should have been something that the city residents were allowed to chime in on, whether they added another camera, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, by the contract, correct?
Yes, I mean it's unclear under what contract there could be a 9th camera.
I see. Okay. So I'm going to ask a kind of a general overview question, and I want each one of you to take this, okay, including Peter, hopefully, who can now join in, even though for a moment there we had a problem. Maybe we'll start with you, Peter, to answer this question. What are some of the pros and cons of ALPRs, or automated license plate readers? And I guess we also have to say, is there any pros at all to Flock, the company that Santa Cruz City and Watsonville and Capitola are contracting with to provide these cameras? It sounds like a lot of people have nothing but cons on that. But Sean, why don't you dive in and answer that question first, okay? What I'm asking is, what are the pros and cons of ALPR cameras? And then are there any pros to Flock, the company?
Well, I'd actually like to start up by addressing your question about Flock first, because that's what's really being considered tomorrow before the city council. Okay. Flock has a well-established pattern of negligence in their security in the way that they handle our data. We've seen it's very easy to intercept the network traffic. The devices themselves are using outdated software that could be very easily hacked, and even the hardware itself is fundamentally insecure. There are techniques in hardware that they're not using. These techniques are used on, for example, the iPhone. It's not exotic technology. It's entirely possible to design a camera where even if a hacker does manage to get malicious software onto the camera itself, they are not able to access that raw image data. And so across the board, Flock is not protecting our data. And we've got people around the country ringing alarm bells, including Senator Wyden. This is a really big problem. And so Flock, we can't trust them. The entire software stack, we can't trust them. And we've so just one more example of how ridiculous their security is. They, in order to help prevent bad actors from performing searches, they required the actors to put in a description of why they were doing this. This is really, I can't believe, I just read this in that Look Good article. This blew my mind. You have to type out why you're searching. So you're supposed to say ICE. And then if you say ICE, your search doesn't go through. So an ICE agent just has to say investigation, and then it'll be blocked, right? It won't be blocked, right? So the entire stack. And I want to point out that there are alternative vendors out there that have cameras that are employing the best practices in the hardware. So again, even if a hacker got malicious software onto the camera, they wouldn't be able to see, for example, the image of your face, right? The data comes out of the camera already converted into just like a license plate number. And that leads me into why I'm against license plate readers, period. It provides this mass surveillance mechanism, and I'm particularly concerned about the role that it can play in suppressing dissent. And I don't think I need to help work people's imaginations to understand why that's so scary right now under this current administration. And in fact, with Flock, we have seen the searches were done around these No Kings rallies, right? And just 2 weeks ago, I was at a meeting of a group called CHIRP. It's a great group of these young Gen Z activists advocating for human rights in the Philippines. And I'd say a third of their meeting was just about Flock, and they were trying to figure out how to deal with it. And they were concerned about were they being watched as they were just organizing in a group, right? So I think it has a cooling effect.
So you're saying that the Flock, the data they gather with these automated license plate readers has already been used to target activists around
right.
No Kings?
Yeah, we have evidence of that.
Okay.
Yes.
And I see Sid nodding his head. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I think that's been documented probably in 404 Media or other outlets like that No Kings protests, like that phrase was in search reason in the logs. And I actually found personally ICE protest in logs, which actually wasn't in the article, but I've also seen that in logs in California agencies searching for that.
And when you say, so explain in logs, what you're looking at when you're seeing this in a log.
So every time an officer does a search for a license plate, that is logged. And that logging exists for transparency and accountability. And so
whether it's sheriff, police,
Yep.
city police, or any kind of law enforcement officer.
Right.
Okay.
Any law enforcement officer does a search. There's a web interface. It's just like anything else. You type in, I think there might be an app too, but you type in the license plate and the time frame you're looking at and how many cameras or what networks you want to search.
And what you're searching for.
And what you're searching for, a search reason.
Okay.
And so all that gets put in a log, every single search, complete across the entire Flock network. And so now those, fortunately, those audits are a public record, and so I've been able to obtain them via public records requests, and that's how I've found really everything I've reported since October.
And you found that some law enforcement agencies had typed in the phrase "No King's Day" to search?
I didn't find that. That's what was documented in the media.
Oh.
I found one that wasn't documented that was ICE protests.
Okay.
And forgive me, I can't remember the agency that searched for that.
So explain the ramifications of that. Here's a law enforcement officer searching the Flock database for No King's Day parade information or ICE protest information. Why should someone care about them doing that?
I think it's very, very chilling. And so, I mean, this is now.
Why would they be doing that?
Well,
and why should we care?
Keep in mind, I mean, the search is associated with a plate too. So there was some known plate and a reason given with it, ICE protests, and so that means that the plate came from somewhere, and for some reason they are searching for where that plate is, and so. That's what happened. Now, their reason is ICE protests. That is, there could always be an innocent explanation for everything, but that doesn't sound good from a First Amendment standpoint.
Essentially, they're tracking activists, right?
Right.
They're trying to figure out where this person's going, what they're doing there, that kind of thing. And as you pointed out, Sean, under the current administration, it's very concerning. So I want to bring you in, Julia, if you could tell us... answer the same question. What are some of the pros and cons of ALPRs, the automated license plate readers, and Flock specifically?
Yeah, we want to thank the City Council for being open to investigating this and learning about an extremely technical issue that's new to most of us, in addition to the public. But I think the police want to do something to cut down on crime. You know, anyone that's lived in Santa Cruz, I lived downtown for many years, understands that we have a lot of crimes of opportunity, and the police and the council have been trying to do something about that. I think the attractiveness of something like Flock is access to cameras that they can lease and not buy. So a smaller layout of capital up front, and a lot of really flashy marketing, PR, and support that tells them, you own the data. This is going to be safe, right? Unfortunately, when you look at the actual business practices of Flock, everything from the design and testing of the product, where they don't bring in white hat hackers, so-called, to make sure it's safe in what is standard in the industry. Anyone in Silicon Valley knows that. You don't have to be technical. To the contracts they give to the police departments and city attorneys to sign that say national lookup, which violates California state law. Why would you send that to a state with 40 million people when you know it's against the law? To everything else that they've done, you know, building their system, making it so easily hackable, and creating this date and time-stamped map. It's, in essence, it's akin to what they found at the Supreme Court level, U.S. versus Carpenter in 2018. It violates the Fourth Amendment. If you have a map that shows where residents go and when, and it's searchable by law enforcement without a warrant, then it violates the U.S. Constitution. So it hasn't been found in court yet for Flock, but we think that's where it's going. And we think it shouldn't take the Supreme Court to do what's right. We should be protecting our residents and their civil rights.
And we can't be sure the Supreme Court will do what's right either. So unfortunately,
we can't keep people safe if they're exposed. So we can't sacrifice individual safety for an idea of public safety that hasn't been realized by criminology data. Flock cameras don't reduce crime.
Okay, now I want to bring a thank you for that, Julia, and I want to let Peter also chime in if you have some thoughts there, Peter. You've been listening, I'm sure.
Yes, I don't think it's been mentioned yet that the CEO of Flock, in a conversation, I believe, with the police chief, said that anti-Flock activists like us are domestic terrorists.
Okay.
The police chief who heard that was so shocked that they canceled the Flock contract, said your values clearly don't align with ours. So Flock is as bad as it gets. They're also very closely connected with the Trump administration, some of the major funders. I'm sorry if somebody said this and I didn't catch it. Peter Thiel, who is one of the founders, or perhaps the founder of Palantir, they are admittedly trying to build a universal nationwide surveillance system where they can track everybody all the time. And that's what they're up to. And we really need to get away from them. But as somebody else said, any kind of ALPR system that allows innocent people to be tracked in all their movements is not good. And we will oppose any of that. But Flock, for sure, Flock's by far the biggest at the moment. And they're a company that is really intolerable and dangerous, extremely dangerous. And, I'm actually very pleased with the city council for taking this step, making this motion to terminate the Flock contract.
Now, we don't know how they're going to vote yet, though, right? Because it was 3 city council members who put this on.
Oh, no, it's got to be voted on tomorrow.
Right,
absolutely.
No, but we don't know how it's going to go.
Made. And right. It is extraordinarily unusual for this city council, for all elected bodies in Santa Cruz County, and I'm pretty sure in pretty much every county, to go against law enforcement. I don't know the reasons for that. I have suppositions, but it's pretty much universal. And for them, for these 3 city council members who are hardly raving liberals, to make this motion is a huge step, and they need our support for this. And this is the first step. And the motion does not say we want to get another ALPR system in, they said the staff is directed to come back with a proposal for a new ALPR system if and when they find one that meets various criteria, including protecting civil liberties. So it's a really excellent first step, a huge first step, and will make us all safer in the long run.
If it passes, right?
If it passes, right. Yes.
Okay. Sean is raising his hand.
I may have already said this, but I want to emphasize the fact that these flock systems, which our city council can vote down tomorrow, right? Refuse to renew the contract. These flock systems are uploading whole images. And actually, a big thank you to Sid. Sid actually sent me an email because I was asking him about this. He sent me images that we have from these flock cameras. And like you can see the whole intersection. You can see multiple cars in the intersection. You can see people walking in the intersection. You can see the face of the driver, of the passenger. And like I was saying, you can also see bumper stickers. And I think this is really alarming. I know a number of people in my personal life who anonymize themselves on the internet. You know, if they use social media, they don't use their real name. Well, guess what? Now you have to stop driving a car because
that's what I was going to say. What if somebody just said, "Well, just stop driving"? but for real though, like so you've got there are plenty of people. I'm sure we all know them who are really careful about their presence on the internet. They don't use their real names. Okay, now you go to an anti-ICE protest in your friend's car, and your friend is not careful with their social media, and now the government has you two together, and now they have you tagged as an anti-ICE protester. So like this mass surveillance that has been creeping into our lives through the internet for the past couple decades, really since the war on terror started, it's coming into our street corners, right? It's everywhere with a system like Flock. So we absolutely must reject a system like Flock that posts all that data for the government to surveil.
And as Sean said, it's not just the license plate, and they can search. They can search by bumper sticker, by dings and dents in the car. It's not just the license plate. They are, make no mistake, this is not an innocent endeavor by them. And Flock, of course, is out for profit. They don't care about civil liberties. All they care about is their profit. And it's an extraordinarily dangerous system that everybody ought to be concerned with.
So I want each one of you to answer this, and maybe we'll this time start with Julia. If you had to create a flyer to inform the public who knew virtually nothing about this topic with bullet points that were kind of to the point as to the concerns around these and what people can do if they are concerned, what would you put on that flyer?
Mass surveillance is not safety. The police should need a warrant to search your whereabouts. Write the city council and tell them to get the Flock out.
Okay. And Sid?
Nice.
I have very little to add to that, but I mean, I do agree that the Fourth Amendment is the primary. That's always the number one issue for me about these cameras. So the constitutional rights are very important there. And yes, please contact the city council and tell them how you feel about the cameras.
And the concerns about the cameras, if you were trying to break it down very simply for somebody who knew nothing, it would be like mass surveillance, violations of your Fourth Amendment rights, the fact that they're gathering more information than they claim and using it in ways they didn't tell us they were going to use it or get our permission to use it, and hacking, the potential for hacking, for people to hack in and access this data, and the fact that Flock doesn't really protect it. And I'm sure there's other reasons. Am I missing something? Sean?
Sorry, my flyer would probably say, keep Trump's prying eyes out of my front yard. Because that's really what we're talking about. I don't care what the laws say. Again, over the past couple decades, we've been dealing with this online. The federal government has had these so-called national security letters where basically, in many cases, without a warrant, they can approach a tech company and they can say, I want all the communications from this user. And you can't tell them that we're doing it. You can't tell anybody that we're doing it. and as I said, without a warrant. And so my mind immediately goes to that when I think about these flock camera systems. My fear is that the executive branch at the federal level is going to be able to use some mechanism like these national security letters that is, in my opinion, circumventing the law to do warrantless searches of us. And we've seen this administration openly jailing people who had the wrong opinion on the Palestine situation, right?
And other things like getting them, having their tenure revoked at colleges,
Absolutely.
Deporting them if they're
Absolutely.
not, if they're here studying on a student visa.
So
So
that's why we have to get Trump's eyes out of this city. We can't kick Trump out of the White House right now, but we can kick out these eyes from our city right now, tomorrow.
Okay. Well, Peter, you want to chime in, and then we'll move on to the next question? What would you put on your flyer, Peter?
One more bullet point, in addition to the ones that have already been stated, is that the only way to protect the data is not to collect it in the first place, because it's hackable, because instructions are on the dark web. Literally, this isn't hyperbole. Literally, the only way to make sure the data doesn't get misused, as it has been repeatedly misused, is to not collect it in the first place.
Okay, and that leads us into talking about the city council meeting tomorrow night. So who wants to answer this? What time is that meeting? How can people get involved? If they can't be in person, is there another way they can attend that meeting or view it? I know community TV, I think the city website perhaps has it. There's a Zoom link, etc. What are all the ways that people can involve themselves in this meeting, and what time and where and all that?
Yeah, so the meeting starts at 2:30 p.m. And flock is the third item and the final item after the consent agenda, which in shorthand means it's going to be really soon after 2:30, and we can't tell you exactly when. So safest bet, be there as close to 2:30 p.m. as you can at City Hall if you'd like to speak. If you're going to be dialing in and want to speak remotely, you can do that via Zoom, and all the information on how to do that is on the City Council's website. If you just do an online search for Santa Cruz City Council meetings, it'll have all the information you need.
How convenient that they do this at 2:30 when a lot of people are working on a weekday. Yeah. So what if somebody's working and they just can't get away, they can't time their lunch break, right, or whatever. Can they then view the City Council meeting later on community TV or something like that?
Yes, it's recorded, and they'll be able to view that. They are also encouraged to call and email City Council. The information's on that same webpage, Santa Cruz City Council meetings.
Santa Cruz City Council meetings. Great.
Yeah,
you probably already said that.
You can email tonight or tomorrow morning.
You can comment in advance?
You can send an email, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you could have done it any time since the agenda came out. Look at it's item 28 on the January 13th, 2025 City Council agenda. That's what you need for your subject line. Item 28, Ray flock cameras, and send an email. Emails received by them now, anytime after 5 p.m. tonight, will not be in the public packet, but they will go to the City Council members. So if you can't attend the meeting, send an email, and if you want to watch it later, you can again do that see how to do that from the City Council website. They have instructions for doing that.
All right. Well, I want to open up the phone lines now and remind listeners this is Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, George Cadman. I'm joined in the studio by Sean Doherty, Julia Monahan, and Sid Jones. And Peter Gelblum is joining us by phone. We're talking about Flock Safety, quote unquote, the company that the city of Santa Cruz and Capitola and Watsonville are currently working with to supply their automated license plate readers and store the data. And the Santa Cruz City Council's consideration of canceling that contract tomorrow at their 2:30 p.m. City Council meeting at 2:30. And I want to let folks know you can call in and join the conversation at 831-900-5773. That's 831-900-5773. Sounds like we already have a caller. So the City Council, just to be clear, Sean, is considering canceling this contract. What's the likelihood that will happen, do you think?
I want to be careful how I answer this because I want to encourage everyone to show up.
Right. You don't want to make it sound like it's a done deal. But
no. I think our chances are good. For everything that I've heard, and probably the other guests have a better inside view than I do, but from what I've heard, things are looking good. People are on our side. We're being encouraged to be respectful and to keep the city council on our side. But let's get a lot of people showing up with signs, anti-flock signs. Zoom in. We need a really strong show of support for ending this contract. But yeah, our chances are good.
And if they do end the contract, they would still be contracted through March 27th or something, and they find an alternative before that deadline date.
No, through February 12th. The contract provides that it can be terminated on 30 days.
Okay,
notice.
so they could terminate it and have it. They could be done with the city of Santa Cruz by February 12th if they terminate at tomorrow's meeting.
That's what the motion calls for.
Okay, great. So we have a phone call. Hello, caller. You're on the air with Peter, Sid, Julia, and Sean and myself. You have a question? Hello. I don't know why this isn't working. They must have hung up. So I want to let folks know, if you call in and we don't put you on the air immediately, please hang out on hold until I can put you on the air. You should hear us talking in the studio, and I will bring you on the board as quickly as I can, but I need to wait for a proper moment to do so. So the number again is 831-900-5773. That's 831-900-5773 to join the conversation here. So if they were to end the contract with Flock, what do you think the next steps would be? Are they going to be trying to replace Flock with a different company? Or are those cameras going to be removed if the contract is ended? Will Flock remove those cameras from our city? Who wants to take that?
Go ahead. Okay, they will. When the contract's over, yes, the cameras do need to be removed, and so that's also a part of a process, and it doesn't always go smoothly with Flock. And so, we are going to have to make sure that the cameras are actually removed. I would certainly ask that the cameras be covered if the vote goes through to stop illegal data collection and to
covered
protect,
how, like cardboard?
Plastic bag, yeah.
Okay.
It's been done in other. It was done before in Eugene.
So
and other.
The city couldn't take them out because that would somehow be damaging their equipment or something like that.
Maybe, yeah. Possibly. Yeah,
it's against the contract, but we could take. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to say that.
I was thinking it.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Sid.
Listen, the cameras are for the benefit of the city and the SCPD, not for the benefit of Flock. So what you have to do is you have to keep paying them for the 30 days. But I'm almost certain that you could take them down or at least cover them up immediately.
Yeah, cover them up. But the city probably wouldn't want to take them down in case they damage them.
The contract very expressly says that the city owns the data. Flock does not own the data. So if we don't want to collect the data anymore, that's up to us.
That raises a whole other question of what happens to the data. If the city of Santa Cruz terminates the contract. I saw Sean raising his hand, but we do have a call, and I want to make sure that we get this caller on. Hello, caller. Are you on the air?
Hi there. I just had a question about how can we go about possibly getting Watsonville and Capitola to end their contracts if you guys know when those are up. Also, if there are any contracts within the county of Santa Cruz.
Great question.
I know. And then I had one other question, but I think I forget what it is.
Why don't you hang out while they answer the first one? If you think of it, you can ask it, okay? Who wants to take this on? Julia?
Yeah, I can speak to the county piece.
Great.
So the county does not have a contract with Flock Safety, and the current sheriff and the prior sheriff have both gone on record saying that they're not going to. So there are other considerations about travel data of residents and something called a fusion center state portal that does have license plate data. And there is a way that I like to call it the phone a friend option. If you remember the game show where you can basically, one law enforcement officer can call another in a jurisdiction that does have access to the Flock database. They've got to log in. And Sid's got records of, one law enforcement agency searching for Eugene, Oregon, law enforcement. As soon as they turned off their cameras, they were running searches in Los Angeles. So this is something that happens all the time. So just because you shut off the system, that doesn't mean you shut off the local PD and sheriff's ability to search. So that's the type of issues we're grappling with on the county. We certainly haven't forgotten about Capitola and Watsonville. Do you want to speak to that, or?
I'm sure, yeah. So, I mean, we're definitely, we are Get the Flock out, Santa Cruz County. We operate
Flock. We're being very clear. The word that he stated was flock, Flock.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all.
That's what he said.
For all of you.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have been working on both those cities, and we will be continuing to as well.
Okay, so that's a possibility we should keep our eye on. And then Sean's raising his hand there.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind people that even if this contract is basically ended tomorrow, it's still being left open that we could have new systems in the future.
Right. And
even if we have systems that don't have the huge security problems that these flock systems do, I still have privacy concerns. So let's just imagine that we have a better system that can't be hacked. Okay, so like with Flock, they can download a virus onto the camera and then they can get the raw images, the hacker, and they can get it. So let's imagine that we have a better camera that has properly designed hardware, and a hacker can put the virus on the camera. They can't get the raw image data. All that is coming out of that camera is license plate numbers. There's still this issue that I was describing of measuring or monitoring dissent, because, as I said, it only takes one person who has a social media account, and then they find their license plate number, and then they can connect that to someone who's in their car, or they can connect it to a car that keeps going to the same places as them at the same time. So just that license plate number, when you have enough data points, allows the government to surveil us. So we cannot accept new systems, in my opinion. I'm a hardliner.
We'll delve more into that in a moment. I just want to make sure the caller, did you feel like your question was answered?
Yeah, and I did think of my other question was, what are all of the white cameras that are on top of all of our street lights that seem like they have just grown to all of our major intersections?
Okay, we'll take the answer to.
And what are those
go
connected
ahead.
to?
What are they connected
Do we know
to?
Where that data goes?
Let's open up the phone line, but let Sid answer that question. Okay, thank you so much for your call. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really appreciate that because there's it's not just there's many different kinds of surveillance cameras around on different poles and things like that, and so many intersections in Santa Cruz do have large white cameras mounted above them. And I haven't looked into it too deeply. I'm assuming they are video cameras and just general traffic surveillance cameras. And so I believe that's the case.
This is funny because my older sister the other day, she came up to me. She said, I think I ran a red light, and I saw one of those white cameras on the top of the thing, and now I'm probably going to get a ticket in the mail. And I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. There's only a couple of red light cameras, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're on 41st Avenue, okay? Mm-hmm. And when they go off, you know it, because they flash a white light when they take the picture. And so most of those little white cameras are not red light cameras. Most of them are just like you said, Sid, they're surveillance. And I want to talk about what happens if the city of Santa Cruz votes to end the contract with Flock. And we've already said that if that were to be what the decision is to end the contract, it would end around February 12th, 13th, something like that. What will happen? Okay, we already talked about covering the cameras if Flock doesn't take them out right away. But how about that data? How can the city ensure that data, or can they ensure that the data that's been collected, that Flock, say, disposes of it and doesn't keep it and then share it with ICE or Department of Homeland Security or, some other law enforcement agency in, I don't know, Texas? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and I'd like to welcome Peter to weigh in this too, but one of the problems we had with the contract is that it gives Flock a worldwide perpetual license to the data under certain circumstances, and we argued successfully that violates SB 34, which doesn't allow the data to be used outside of California.
That's a state bill.
Right, that's a state bill. And so the fact that Flock has this entry in there saying that the Santa Cruz must share their data with Flock or give Flock a worldwide perpetual license. There's a few other words in there too. That clearly violates SB 34. So the contract itself violates SB 34.
Violates our state law.
Right. Yes. And now, so the important point though is that they have that license in perpetuity. So I do have the question, do they ever have to delete what data they have on us? And that, that's my point on that.
I thought that Flock supposedly did delete the data after a certain set
days.
period of time.
I've heard 30 days.
Go ahead, Peter.
To delete it, under the contract, they're supposed to delete it after 30 days. If I were an attorney, if I was the city attorney, I would write a letter to Flock demanding evidence of compliance with that. So I don't know. The worldwide license that Sid's talking about is for anonymized data, and I don't know what that means in this situation. I don't know how you anonymize a license plate. Unless they're just talking about the number of hits or the number of cars, but no license plate data. I don't know how that works, so that I'd have to look at. But the specific data is supposed to be destroyed, deleted after 30 days.
Okay, we have a caller. I want to make sure that they chime in here. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Thank you, George. I appreciate this news and report. It's about Palantir. My question is the link between former mayor and supervisor Ryan Coonerty, who gained grants for Palantir and connected to, I believe, the license plate readers. And there's mistakes made in these systems. They can make some kind of camera mistake where a number or a letter is off. This is happening multiple times when I cross bridges, and Bay Area Fast Track sends me a photo of my license plate claiming I didn't pay this, which I previously had paid it, and then I may have copies, and I, of course,
okay, caller, I kind of think I get the point, but can you phrase that as a question so that my guests can respond? Is that possible?
That's a good one. I'm all over the place. The question is Palantir connected with the license plate readers?
Yes, and let's have Sid reply because he brought that up, or actually it was Peter who brought that up previously, but any one of you can reply. Is that the question then? How they're involved?
Well, yes, how they're involved, and is it tied to state or federal funding for the city of Santa Cruz?
Okay, let's let somebody reply to that question. Thank you for your call. Really appreciate it. Peter, you want to jump in since you brought up Palantir?
My only information about it is that Palantir, I don't think Palantir itself, but Peter Thiel, who is intimately connected with Palantir as a founder or CEO or funder or something, is a major funder.
Who is Peter Thiel for folks who don't know?
Peter Thiel is, I think it was it PayPal where he made all his billions? Is a billionaire, Silicon Valley billionaire, who is extremely far to the right, and a great friend of Trump's, and is not somebody I want to associate with anything that I do. But he's my understanding is he's a major funder of Flock, and that's the connection. Somebody else may know more than that.
Got it. All right, Sean.
And I just want to point out, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Department of Homeland Security fully subsidized the initial installation of Flock cameras in Santa Cruz. I believe that we were approached. Is that not true?
I don't believe that's true. I believe they applied for that grant, and the county removed it from the package, is my understanding. Okay. So they used general funds from the city of Santa Cruz to buy the initial 8 cameras for Santa Cruz.
Okay, well, we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that each one of my guests has had an opportunity to talk about all the things they want to talk about and make sure anything we missed in this interview gets covered. But I also want to let folks know that if you have a question, and particularly if you can make it pointed, okay, don't ramble, then we have time for you. 831-900-5773. 831-900-5773. Sean, anything we missed? We only have 10 minutes. Tell everybody why they should go to the meeting, or chime in whatever way they can, how they can, and why you think they should, about Flock, about license plate reader cameras in the city of Santa Cruz.
Well, definitely everybody needs to get out to this meeting, whether in person or over Zoom. You can show up. You don't have to speak. Actually, you can just go there and hold up a sign. Probably a sign will be provided for you. We just need to show a strong presence. And hopefully we've made the case that Flock is particularly problematic. There are all kinds of security holes. We've got all kinds of evidence showing abuse of the system, from officers searching for their exes, stalking their exes, to
that's real.
That's real. Yeah. That's real. To
not in Santa Cruz, just to be clear, right?
I'm not sure if that's Santa Cruz. Maybe Sid knows.
Okay, I didn't think that happened here in this city, but yeah.
But to federal agents monitoring what we're doing at protests, like the No Kings protest, But I also want to emphasize that what I see happening a lot in the discourse about the Flock systems here in Santa Cruz, I see a lot of focus on the hackers. Okay.
You mean outside entities hacking into that database, as opposed to, say, the law enforcement agencies utilizing that service.
Right. And so I want to emphasize that even though it is possible to make a much more secure system that can't be hacked, there's still the agents at the end. There's still the officers that we're relying on to do the right thing, and that's the vulnerability. So I think that we should not be supporting any more of these cameras, even if Flock gets canceled.
And Sid, you've uncovered some of your Freedom of Information Act requests uncovered the fact that both the Santa Cruz and Capitola police departments had shared some of the data, the Flock data, with ICE, with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which is in violation of state law.
That's right.
Right? So that's one way it's been misused by law enforcement, even here locally.
Yes.
Okay, we do have a phone call. Hello, caller. You're on the air on Talk of the Bay.
Hi. Thanks for covering this topic. My question is addressing sort of what you were just talking about in terms of protecting information, and I'm wondering if there, in this process of educating people and trying to get these out of our city and county, if it wouldn't also be wise to address this as just a Fourth Amendment issue, like all the different ways that we are just getting used to having our rights chipped away at, and people would just kind of go, okay, well, this is the next thing, and kind of give up on it, as opposed to really looking at it in the bigger realm as a Fourth Amendment issue.
Okay, so I think the basic question or comment you're making is that you're asking the guests to tie this into the larger issues of our freedoms and our rights and the Constitution. Is that right?
Yes, and this would be an opportunity to take the issue one step further and really address it and educate people about the Fourth Amendment aspect.
Okay, that's a great question. I want to let Peter take that first, and then we'll have the other three in the studio here answer that. Thank you for your call.
Yeah, I will say that the ACLU and others, I think including Electronic Frontier Foundation, have filed lawsuits, a couple lawsuits against San Jose and somebody else in the Bay Area about the cameras, ALPRs, I assume Flock, although I'm not sure about that, on Fourth Amendment grounds. Interestingly, their lawsuit is focused on the searches of the data, not the collection of the data itself. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens with those suits, but those, one or more of those suits could result in some binding precedent that everybody, all cities and counties can use to get rid of the cameras, or at least get rid of the searches. Now, the data is really sort of useless without the searches, and that may be why they focused on that. But that attempt that the caller is calling about is happening as we speak.
Okay, and then Julia, do you have any thoughts on what the caller had to say?
I have a lot of thoughts about that.
You could talk for an hour. We only have a few more minutes.
There are lawsuits. That's something we hadn't talked about a lot, and I'm really relieved to hear that the city is taking action to protect us financially from those lawsuits, as well as to protect the residents and their civil rights. There is a citizens lawsuit in Norfolk, Virginia. There's an individual who is encountering flock cameras multiple times a day as he comes out his front door. These cameras are targeting people everywhere. We've already touched on how they are actively targeting activists, protests. We've talked about women being stalked by their partners. LGBTQ people and organizers are also being targeted. But I think to take a step back, because I was one of those people before Flock came onto my radar, where I was like, great, I have all these apps tracking me. I don't care. I don't break the law. You want to know where I go? That's fine. The game has changed. What changed? AI. It's the equivalent of, if you have a very disorganized house, it might be very difficult to find evidence. But if you send in a team of FBI agents and librarians to index it and put it on the internet and make it searchable, all of a sudden my private information is feeling a lot less private. And that's what's happening now that we have an AI-powered tracking database like Flock. Flock's a database. It's not just a camera system. It's not the same as it was in 2010, where it's like, sure, like Facebook knows my location. I don't care.
It's not just a few white cameras on top of some intersection poles that somebody may or may not be sitting in an office somewhere looking at traffic go by. This is a whole new ballgame. Plus, not to mention what Sean and others have mentioned, which is the administration that we have right now.
Exactly. So law enforcement, politicians, their agencies can harness this data and search it just as intelligently as Google. And they can use it to target people and organizers. And that's a threat to everyone's civil liberties.
And Sid, did you have any thoughts on the caller's comment or question there about tying this issue in perhaps with a kind of larger, bigger picture type thing around constitutional rights?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great question. And really, I mean, the Fourth Amendment is the main part, the problem that I have with these cameras. But it is really important to raise awareness of the Fourth Amendment and for people to understand it. And so I do think that's very important. I'm really glad these suits are happening. And I guess, I want to just reiterate, I think something Julia mentioned earlier, which is in 2018, the Supreme Court did say that geolocation data is extremely sensitive and requires a warrant. And they were talking about cell phone towers at the time. But it's already been adjudicated that people's location really should be accessed via a warrant if it is stored by the government.
Just so that folks don't perhaps know what the Fourth Amendment is to the U.S. Constitution, it protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government, generally requiring law enforcement to obtain a warrant based on probable cause before an intrusion into a person's reasonable expectation of privacy, and is a cornerstone of personal liberty and privacy in the United States, ensuring that individuals are secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against arbitrary government intrusion. Sean is raising his hand there.
Yeah, well, you reminded me, it was so common for people to say, well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, then what do I care? But increasingly what's happening is that something that you're doing wrong is a speech act, saying something that is the wrong political thought. So we are really in danger of losing our First Amendment as well as our Fourth. We've lost both, but
we're in danger of losing all our rights. We've got 1 minute left here before we have to wrap up the show, and I want to give each one of you, we're going to have to cut a tiny bit in, 30 seconds to make your final pitch here about the City Council meeting and the vote tomorrow and Flock and ALPRs and everything. So, going to start with Peter, who we've got on the phone.
Very quickly, I reiterate that the only way to ensure the security of the data is not to collect it. It's literally true. And second, if you go to the meeting or you write something, please thank the 3 council members who made the motion, because it took some guts to do that, to come out against law enforcement's wishes. And it actually took some courage to do that. So please include that in your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for being with me today. Now, Sid, can you reply to that as well?
I'm really concerned about what I believe is a rise of authoritarianism in our country. I believe we're under an authoritarian government right now. And I see surveillance. I have a saying that surveillance is the tip of the authoritarian spear. because that's like surveillance is really the key to being an authoritarian, knowing about what people are doing, what they're up to. Every authoritarian regime in history has done that. And so I think it's really important that we get rid of these cameras and not collect this data, keep everybody safe.
Thank you, Sid. And Julia?
Yeah, I just want to put out there that this is one way that we can act locally on a national issue and push back against that authoritarian reach. This is ICE's eyes on our migrant residents and neighbors, our community members and others. So we can't stop everything about the current administration, but this is something we can actually do. And if you want more information, please go to our website, gettheflock, FLOCK, out.org.
Gettheflockout.org.
And thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Julia. And Sean, you get the last word.
All right. Show up tomorrow. Have a few talking points. If you feel comfortable talking at the mic for 2 minutes, you don't even have to go the full 2 minutes. Or if you'd prefer, you can just stand holding a sign. It'll make a difference. Thank you. And
Julia, one last time, the city website where people can get involved if they can't physically attend in person.
Yeah, just do an online search for Santa Cruz City Council meetings.
Santa Cruz City Council meetings online search. Thank you all so very much for joining me today, Peter, Julia, Sid, and Sean, to cover this very important issue on Talk of the Bay. Thank you so much.